Okay, reflexive verbs. What are reflexive verbs? Reflexive verbs, or I verbi riflessivi, are verbs whose subject and object are the same. Therefore, the action is reflected back to the person or thing performing the action. How are reflexive verbs used? They are generally used when referring to actions that you perform on yourself, like dressing yourself, or reciprocal actions, like hugging each other, and they're always accompanied by a reflexive pronoun. Okay, so what are reflexive pronouns? A reflexive pronoun, or un pronome riflessivo, is a pronoun that is used with reflexive verbs to show that the action is directed back at the subject. In English, the reflexive pronoun is often implied rather than stated, such as in I get dressed rather than saying I dress myself, or we hug rather than saying we hug each other. But it's usually expressed in Italian. Okay, so that's a little bit different between English and Italian. They are as follows. Okay, so we have our singular and plural pronouns. So in the first person singular, we have me to mean myself, and we have chi to mean ourselves. Okay, and in the second person, we have ti to mean yourself, and vi to mean yourselves in the plural. And finally, in the third person, we have si to mean himself, herself, or yourself. And if you'll notice, it's also si in the plural, okay, to mean themselves. So reflexive pronouns follow the same placement patterns as direct object pronouns, which we'll cover later in the course. Okay, so I just want to get you a little bit familiar with it in this module here in the verbs area, so that once we start talking about how to use direct object pronouns, then you'll know a little bit more about how to use these as well. But these are the ones that you use with reflexive verbs. Okay. So, for example, if you say, I call myself, in Italian, you say, I call myself, but you really are saying, my name is in English. Okay, so you'd say, mi chiamo, and then your name. Okay, so I would say, mi chiamo Laura, or I call myself Laura. Okay, you wash yourself, and then you dress yourself, would be ti lavi, poi ti vesti. Okay, so in this case, we're using the reflexive verb lavarsi and the reflexive verb vestirsi. Okay, so in this case, we put ti before the conjugated verb. Okay, so ti lavi. Okay, these are both the second person singular. And then I also have the verb vestirsi. So we have poi, then ti vesti. Okay, so again, it goes before the conjugated verb in the second person singular in this case. Okay, and you can tell that these are reflexive verbs because they end in si, okay, or si. Okay, and then we have she wakes herself up at 8 o'clock, or in Italian, lei si sveglia alle 8. Okay, so in this case, we're using the reflexive verb svegliarsi. Again, you can tell it's a reflexive verb because it ends in si. Okay, and here we put the si, okay, because it's third person singular, saying she, before the conjugated verb. Okay, so lei si sveglia alle 8. Okay, and then finally, we hug each other tightly. Ci abbracciamo forte. Okay, so in this case, we're using the first person plural. Okay, ci, and then we have our abbracciamo, okay, which comes after the ci because it's conjugated, forte. Okay, so there's a quick introduction to reflexive verbs. If they're still a little bit confusing, don't worry. I just wanted to introduce them to you, and they'll get easier to use as you practice.